You're listening to a Day1.fm show.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Mumbition, where we're diving into the stories of working mums who are navigating the exciting yet challenging journey of building their own business from the ground up. Whether they're in the early stages of launching or they're just considering an idea, these women are balancing it all and inspiring us all with their resilience and creativity. Today, I'm thrilled to have our guest, Tatum Steers, who's the co-founder of Hirey, Australia's first online NDIS-supported worker directory. Alongside her co-founder, Jess, Tatum is on a mission to streamline the way service providers find and connect with support workers in the aged and disability sectors. Through Hirey, service providers can run custom worker searches based on client preferences and skill sets, post unlimited job vacancies, and tap into a targeted pool of candidates, ultimately making the hiring process faster, cheaper, and more efficient. Tatum's journey with Hirey is a really great example of how mums are turning ideas into impactful businesses while juggling family and work. Today, I really want to dive deep into the challenges and triumphs that Tatum has experienced as she's built up Hirey and how she supports the others in her life in the process of creating something really meaningful. Tatum, welcome to Mumbition. We are delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Lucy. That was like a fantastic intro.
Oh, good. I'm so pleased.
You nailed it. There's nothing else that I would want to add to that.
We'll just wrap up the interview now. No, I'm really excited to have you here. You've been a member with us over 12 months now, maybe
Yes,
even
that's
2,
right. Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
And excited to see the development of Hirey. And I know Jess, your wonderful co-founder, can't join us today, but we will try and incorporate her as much as we can in the conversation as well. I think it's really interesting to note that a lot more women are starting businesses as a collaboration with someone else. And as I'm sure we'll get into as we start talking, it's such a sensible way to approach this business kind of world, to do it with someone else. So the first question I have for you that we love to ask everybody is, could you tell us in a few sentences how your business helps? So who you help and how?
Essentially, Hirey. So our business, and as you mentioned, I work alongside my co-founder, Jess. Jess is based in Melbourne and I'm based in sunny Perth. So that's our first little challenge that we deal with, but it's actually quite easy to overcome. But together we've worked on Hirey, which, as you mentioned, it's Australia's first online support worker directory. And so essentially what we're doing is connecting workers in the space with service providers looking to hire staff for the participants that they support. So I'm not sure if you've ever had a loved one in need of care. It's quite challenging to find workers that often fit the bill 110%. And so for providers, there's a daily challenge of trying to find the right workers to provide support to their participants. And so what we're doing is making that a lot easier by creating visibility amongst the workforce and facilitating those connections. So it's an online platform that connects service providers and support workers throughout Australia.
Fantastic. And what was the why behind starting this business?
Twofold. Obviously with Hirey, and both Jess and I had actually worked in the sector for the last 15 plus years, and we could see that there was just a major issue with trying to find the right support workers for participants, like on a daily basis. So I think for us as individuals, we'd like to think that we feel like we're problem solvers at heart. We often say there's no such thing as problems, only solutions. And that's something that we learnt many years ago when we first started working together. And for that reason, I think that's why we wanted to start Hirey, is because we felt that there was a key problem that was facing the industry that we're so heavily involved in and working on a daily basis. And so what could we do to solve this problem and solve it for many people? And that's how we came up with the concept of Hirey. And then as two non-tech female founders, we decided to build a tech app. So that's kind of how we landed on that. Yeah. But it's interesting because it took us probably about 7 years to come up with the idea. We knew that we wanted to work together. We knew that we wanted to start something together, but just what that business was going to be was the unknown. And we were obviously at one point, we met working together. And so then, as time progressed and we changed careers, we changed jobs, etc., we'd always come back to it, and that concept of working together, but we just couldn't really hit the nail on the head in terms of what it was that we wanted, like what the problem was that we wanted to solve, and decide on that idea. And then it was around 2021 that we thought, yeah, this is it. This is actually a really good idea. Let's go.
Wow. So that's really curious to me because, I have friends that I talk to too saying, I'd love to work with you. You always have a few colleagues that, and as you guys did, that you really gel with and you've got a similar interest. And I often wonder, how that evolves, but it's obviously just keeping that communication together until the opportunity presents. Did you meet regularly to talk through what the idea might be, or did it just kind of come to you?
Yeah. Do you know what? Like, it's interesting because when we first met, I'd say we were colleagues. That's our first interaction with one another. And as our relationship grew and developed, it then became a friendship. So you kind of move from that, purely colleague to that work/colleague, like colleague/friendship zone, and then you're in a friendship zone as well. So I think because we knew that we could work well together on a professional level. We've got similar work ethics. I think we think the same way, but then there's also areas that she's strong in that aren't necessarily my strong points. You always kind of your strengths exactly, and you kind of just put your best foot forward in that regard. But I think it was a good balance between that friendship, that we found like we had areas that we could both really contribute to and add value, and that kind of balanced us out as well.
So good. So can we talk about the other day, Carrie and I were having a chat to Leanne Faulkner, who is a bit of a specialist when it comes to small business, but she's just done a PhD in mental health for small business owners. And a big part of what she talks about is how you manage the communication in the relationships within your business. And it just strikes me that, as friends running a business, and as you say, that evolved, that relationship slowly evolved. Was there anything that you needed to put in place when you started together to keep, I suppose, boundaries or rules around how you're going to run the partnership?
In hindsight, when you think and you ask the questions, you think, oh, they're great conversations that you should have as first-time founders or first-time going into a business with anyone. I wouldn't say that we intentionally sat down and had such conversations, but we just knew each other really well. So I think from that mental health perspective, as a friend, she could recognize when perhaps I was feeling or sounding a little bit flat, and maybe that's in written communication or, even on the phone, etc., and vice versa. So you kind of know, okay, in this moment, probably need to be here for her as a friend versus being here as a fellow co-founder. So I think because we knew each other really well, we're able to decipher when those moments need to happen. But I think with the communication, it's a bit of a mix. So we're able to obviously have quite serious conversations about business, but then in the same breath, we can switch it up and have a lighthearted conversation on a friendship level. So then, because I think one thing that I was conscious of is not ruining the relationship that we did have. And you want to maintain that, because the last thing you want to do is go into business with someone that you consider such a great friend, and then you have a falling out, which has happened, many a times in business. And then it's your business that's at a loss, but it's also the friendship that you've lost. So far so good. But I think we've worked out ways to, I think it's just being more intuition, friendship intuition, and tuning in and just knowing that person and knowing like they need to have this type of a conversation or this kind of support for right now. And I guess she's really good with that, given I have two small kids at home. When I say small, look, my 8-year-old is like giant size, but I still feel he's small. And then a 4-year-old, she can gauge that with me, where it's like, you're having a rough day, boys are clearly driving you crazy, like what's going on. Yeah.
So important. So important. And I want to get into your boys and all of that home life and business life in a minute. But I also wanted to just ask you about the geographic difference, because obviously, as you mentioned in the intro, you're in Perth and she's in Melbourne. So, I mean, we're living in this fantastic world now where it doesn't really matter where, you know, where we are, we can communicate. But how have you set that up for the business? Do you meet every day online, or how do you balance all of that?
I think sometimes, you know, as bad as it is, like I'll wake up and check my phone and she could be the first person that I text for the day. Sometimes even before I've rolled over to say good morning to my husband, I'm like, hey, how's your day going? And again, because there's like a 2, or during daylight savings, there's a 3-hour time difference between us. So when I'm getting started for the day, you know, sometimes it's lunchtime. So I think telephone, key, communication, phone calls, like usually on the drive back home from school, that's when I'll do like a check-in with her, like a first like phone call check-in for the day. We've probably texted prior, like however many times already. But I think text is really important, those, you know, regular check-in calls throughout the day. If we need to jump on like video calls, we will. But I think we don't have that many video calls in a day as you would think. It's probably mainly just phone calls and texting. But look, the joys of technology, you can just still feel connected with someone yet be so far away.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like, thank goodness that we're living in this time where anything's possible really with that. So that's super interesting, and interesting too to have the time difference as well, that you're in different parts of your day as well.
Yeah.
If we can just touch a bit more now on the creation of the business, because this season of the podcast, we're really trying to look at 2 things really, you know, the nitty gritty of home and work life, which we'll get to in a second, but also how you take an idea from the idea to the actual product, because I know we've all had ideas. What was kind of, I realize this is probably a complex question, but if you could look back now, what was maybe 1 or 2 things that really moved the needle on being able to get it from that idea to the beginnings of what Hirey is now?
I think it's 2-part. It's timing. Like, you know, everyone says timing is always everything. And we just had to both be in the right space, professionally, personally, in a, I guess, in order to commit to the idea and give it our all. Like I said, there was like 7 odd years prior where we were going back and forth, and it probably wasn't the right time for us, and we were still like teetering with different ideas. So I think it had to be that the timing was one thing, but I think also you have to back yourself, but you have to have people that are willing to back you. And so for Jess and I, we're really lucky that we have 2 very supportive husbands that were like, go forth. If you fail, it's okay. But they were never like, you would fail. They're like, this is such a great idea. It's going to be a success. You guys just have to really believe in yourselves. And there wasn't that pressure, because we put enough pressure on ourselves on a daily basis. I think, you know, you don't need the external pressure, but for both of us, they were both really supportive. And I think you then kind of just feel like we have each other, we have them, we've got this kick-ass idea, we can't really fail. And you know what is failure? Like, if the idea doesn't, it's not all that it's cracked up to be in our minds. Well, at least we had a go.
Yeah.
And at least we tried, which is more than others can say. You know, you tried.
Absolutely. So, and what about in terms of, because you mentioned that you didn't, you know, neither of you have a tech background in particular. So how did you overcome this part, like in that initial phase? Did you bring in expertise?
Yeah. So I think that's where we had to, that's part of the knowing your strengths. And it's, you know, I know other startup founders where one has gone and upskilled and learnt how to, you know, use different tech tools, etc., and they've built their own MVPs and whatnot. We just didn't have that. That wasn't a part of our wheelhouse. It's not something that we, either of us, felt comfortable in, nor that we had the time to devote to. So like, you know what, this is something that we need to outsource. So I think that was a little bit tricky, because then you've got to find the right partner. There's just so many things that have to fall into place, but you just do your due diligence and then also pray for the best.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
And
if it doesn't work, just know you can go elsewhere as well. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, that's the two-edged sword of that, right? Like there's so many people, but then there's so many people. So if you're not the right fit for someone. And did you share that role, or was one of you more involved with sourcing that?
I'd say probably when we first started, if you were to ask us, we would have said that maybe out of the two of us, I was potentially the more tech savvy one. But it's actually been a beautiful thing to see. Jess has actually really come into her own in that tech aspect. And she tends to lead a lot of those discussions that we'd have with our developers and whatnot. And it's something that she's good at. It's, again, know your strengths. And when you've got a partnership, where you can kind of rely on someone versus the other. So I think in that sense, she's really flourished in that regard. And yeah, that's kind of how that's progressed for us.
That's great. Now let's talk about, so you've got 2 boys, did I hear you say?
Mm-hmm.
So 8 and 4?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have an 8-year-old boy too, so I understand the level of energetics at that age.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, it's such a big question. How do you manage it all? But I suppose what I'm interested in drawing out is, people can talk about these things in very generic ways, how they manage things. Yeah. But I'm really interested to know how you set your time up, whether you're working in the evenings or the days, if you're working around school hours. Like, how does it kind of work in a week of work for you to be able to manage that?
So I guess for me, recognizing that between 9 a.m. and 2:15, when my alarm goes off to pack snacks to take them for after school pickup, that's like go time for me. So I try and keep all of my work responsibilities to within, school hours, really, those times. And then outside of that, I'm like, it's mum life and mum time and wife time. So it's, there are certain times where, I'll think, okay, there are pressing tasks that I just didn't get to finish during the day. Because when you think about it, 9 to 2 is not that long. And so I think, okay, you know what, maybe when they go to bed, come like 8:30, I'll jump back on the laptop. But then I'm very conscious of the fact that my husband also works long hours and he'll then come back home, and then you want to be able to spend time with them as well. So I've kind of made it, it's not so much a habit that I will get on the laptop late at night. It's only if we have something pressing, or let's say if we need to work with our developers and we have to review things and we're working with different time zones, maybe then. Otherwise, I just know that between 9 to 2:30, that's kind of my time. And you just have to just hustle and get things done during those hours and just focus. Yeah. Be really disciplined in that time, because I think having little kids as well, especially the 4-year-old, he doesn't understand. The older one, you could probably have conversations like, I have to have this meeting, I have to take this call, and he'd understand it. The 4-year-old, just zero crap's given by him. And so I think I just am more conscious. And even with Jess, is conscious of, okay, I might be on a call with her on the way to school, and it's like once I get there, it's like, all right, gotta go, picking up the kids. And like, she knows,
it's over.
Nothing productive is going to happen if they get in the car and then they just hijack the conversation. So
that's great. And what about when ideas come to you? I don't know if you find this, but I definitely, I mean, I have a similar setup in that I work school hours. Sometimes that's till a bit later on the after school care days for me, but then I find, I finish work and then I'll get an idea or I'll think of something. Does that happen to you? Where do you put your ideas? Like, do you use your phone? Like, what's a tech tool that's handy, or are you more analog? Do you write
the voice? The voice notes is really good. And I'll constantly just send like a voice message to Jess and just like debrief on something that I have maybe thought of, and like we can discuss it tomorrow or whatever it might be. But I think that's also something that I struggled with in the beginning, because you're working on this new business it's also exciting and you want to spend all the time that you possibly can and devote to this idea. But then at the same breath, you have your kids, your family responsibilities, etc., mouths to feed. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to sit here and work on the business for, the whole weekend. And I think I would feel also really guilty because I didn't want to feel like I was ever letting her down, and it wasn't like a 50-50 effort between the two of us. And I think though with that, it was just a matter of having those open conversations with her and saying like, this is how I'm feeling about it. And then just the reassurance that she would give, like, don't even worry about it. I get it. You work when you can, and that type of a thing. Because it's hard though. And I think there's a guilt that I would feel towards her in the business, but then also the guilt that you feel towards the kids, because it's like they want to play or they want to do certain things with you. But then in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, I get joy out of working on the business and I would really like to do that. Especially with little boys, they might want to be playing certain games or, and I'm not necessarily into that. Like, I don't want to play Minecraft.
Yeah.
I don't want to get on the iPad and do something like we may have developed a tech app, but I don't want to play like, Nintendo DS right now. So I think there was that for a little bit, but then, just as I get older, I think you just learn how to kind of deal with those feelings and just recognize that, I don't know, I think when you think of balance, like, is there such thing? You just know that there are going to be times when you're going to give more to one than the other. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. Very, very true. Has AI or any kind of other tech tool played a big role in all of this for you, either at home or in the business?
Do you know what? I think there's like, Jess and I were talking about this the other day, and we feel like there's like a real unspoken pressure to use and adopt AI quickly. And look, there are certain elements of the business that we have and where I feel it's worked and then where potentially it hasn't. For example, like with, social postings and whatnot, sometimes it's like, unless you're able to train it to pick up on your brand and your brand voice, some things can just sound really off. And you're like, that's not how we would write. That's not the message that we want to portray. I think now people are also more attuned to knowing like that wasn't written by them versus they've just, pulled that from ChatGPT type of thing. But definitely, I think we're more open to it and recognizing that, especially on the tech side and the development side, we will incorporate that into future development of the app, whether it be, to code certain things or whether it is features wise that are more AI driven for the providers and the workers that use the app. They're all interesting conversations that we have, on a regular basis, and then you take it to your dev team and then you workshop it from there. But I think it's interesting. I wouldn't say on a day-to-day though I would use a lot of AI tools to help me manage like mum life and work life, and maybe there are things that I could probably adopt that would make that easier, but sometimes you're also just used to what you're used to.
100%, and there's only so much time in your brain, space in your brain to be incorporating all this stuff in. But it's so interesting to ask this question, because sometimes I think, oh well, you don't know what you don't know either. Like someone might be using something that's super useful. But
100%.
yes, thank you for sharing that. I think the last question I had for you, but then I really would like to open it up to you if there's something that you'd like to share that we haven't. If there was something that you could change about the world of small business and entrepreneurship, now you guys have been in it for some time, but specifically through the lens of women. So what would you change for women in this space if you could change anything?
Growing up, both Jess and I went to like Catholic girls' high schools, and integrating like business knowledge and programs around entrepreneurship into schools wasn't something that was really existent when we were going through schooling. And so then entrepreneurship and things that we maybe could have learned at tertiary level type of thing, it wasn't something that we were necessarily exposed to. So I think if that was something that was, and I'm sure, my kids are only in primary school right now, so I'm unsure as to kind of what is offered at that high school curriculum level now, but I would like to think that there's more programs and knowledge in and around entrepreneurship for women and small business to encourage girls into that area post school, and to think of it as a viable career option, because having your own business can be so empowering and so freeing. Ultimately it comes down to like your own measures of success and kind of what you foresee that to be for yourself. But for me personally, I have found that being able to be present for my kids and working and doing something meaningful, that gives me a sense of purpose personally. And I found that through business, and having my own business with Jess, where we are answerable just to ourselves and to each other, and you then don't have those external pressures. And I think that's something that is such a beautiful and freeing feeling. And so I think if that education piece was available to a lot more girls and young women coming up as they explore different career options and whatnot, I think that would be a nice change to see.
Such an excellent point. Beautifully articulated too, but such an excellent point, because I think to what you're saying also is we didn't know it was an option necessarily. No. I mean, unless you'd had parents or people in your life as a child who had been an entrepreneur or ran their own business, you didn't really understand that it's an option. And particularly for women, I mean, we know that, I think it's the stat, still 50% of women that start a small business in Australia are coming out of maternity leave. Like, there's a reason, we're choosing this as a path. And I think you're right to know and understand that that's an option really early on from school age will just kind of help tweak your mindset a bit and open up that as a possibility. That's a really excellent point.
Yeah.
It's been so lovely chatting with you, Tatum. Is there anything else we've forgotten to talk about, or something that's important to you and Jess that you'd like to share?
I think we've kind of been busy at the moment because obviously, we're the last few years we've focused on Hirey, but the last few months in particular, we've kind of started on our second venture together. And so we have, because both of us actually work in the space as auditors within the NDIS space. And so we have all of this knowledge in terms of when you've got providers who are either looking to become registered NDIS providers or those that are already registered but looking for assistance with getting ready for their audits. That's kind of turned into another avenue for us where we're able to provide that value. As I said, we're problem solvers. So it's a problem that many, businesses have, trying to get ready for audits and passing that certification process. So we've just been super busy as of late, trying to grow Hirey, but then also growing this second business that we're kind of nurturing right now. So busy times for us, but, it adds variety into our days. It gives us a sense of purpose. And, when you get to kind of work with your best friend every day, you can't really complain. So
sounds totally ideal. I'm sure you've inspired many people listening to this, Tatum. Thank you so very much for sharing everything. And if anyone would like to connect with Tatum, you can find her on our member directory, or you can reach out via the Hirey channels.